We made it to this moment, friends. 2020 did everything it could to take away our sense of normalcy, but it couldn't stop Christopher Nolan. And today, we're here to break down the ending of his latest cinematic enigma, Tenet, true to Nolan's style, left us with more questions than answers, so many, in fact, that another full-length movie might be needed just to explain them. But in reality, things are more logical and straightforward than they seem. Most of the confusion can be cleared up with some simple analysis. That's exactly what we'll do here. Explain the ending and tackle the key questions the film leaves behind. Spoiler alert, major plot details ahead. Let's dive in. First, a quick recap. The protagonist, with help from Neil, Robert Pattinson, and Ives, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, prevents a global apocalypse. Russian oligarch Andrei Sator, aided by forces from the future, planned to trigger a worldwide inversion of entropy, essentially reversing time for everything on Earth. The future believed this would stop climate collapse, but the secret organization Tenet argued it would result in total annihilation due to a time paradox. The device capable of inverting the entire world, an algorithm built in the future, had been split into 9 pieces by its creator. Sator dedicated his life to finding them. Dying of cancer, he planned to activate the algorithm through a nuclear explosion in Stalsk 12, taking the world down with him. But Tenet foils the plan. In the final twist, we learn the protagonist is actually the founder of Tenet. After the events of the film, he'll travel back in time to recruit both Neil and himself, setting the entire operation in motion. Complex? Sure. But let's unpack it further. Did Neil die in the end? Yes, Neil dies. The film makes this clear through the red keychain on his backpack. It appears twice, once during the opera siege where he saves the protagonist, and again during the climax when an inverted soldier opens a door to help Ives and the protagonist reach the algorithm. That soldier is Neil. Nolan makes no attempt to hide it. Those close-up shots of the keychain were no accident. The deeper question is whether Neil knew he would die. All signs point to yes. At the end, Neil tells the protagonist that the entire mission was his plan all along. He then heads to the base to invert and return to the battlefield with the blue team. He's smiling, seemingly at peace, likely because he knows how it ends. He says he's going back to make sure everything goes smoothly. Ironically, it doesn't. He dies, but the mission succeeds. When Neil gives the algorithm piece to the protagonist, it's a major moment. He knows the protagonist lacks 3 parts, and he chooses to give his up. Shortly after, he calls their partnership the end of a beautiful friendship, a phrase that only makes sense if Neil knows they won't see each other again. So, yes, Neil understands that he won't exist in the post-mission world, yet he goes willingly. Let's talk. About time inversion, this is where things get tricky. Inversion isn't time travel in the traditional sense. Using future technology, a person can invert their entropy and move backward through time. They age normally, so from their perspective, their life moves forward even if the world around them doesn't. That's why multiple versions of the same character can exist at once. In one scene, we see 3 versions of the protagonist on screen. You can't see your own face while inverted. That would create a grandfather paradox and lead to instant death. You can interact with other versions of yourself, but you can't recognize them. That's what saves Kat. She sees her future self dive off the boat but doesn't realize it's her. What happened to Sator? The version of Sator who dies on the boat is the one who traveled from the future. He assumed the cat with him was her past self. He was wrong. The original, non-inverted Sator left the boat earlier and continued living until he eventually became the version that dies on the boat. It's a straight line, no contradictions. What about Kat? Here's where it gets interesting. For a short time, 2 versions of Kat exist in the world. One sees her future self diving from the boat. Later, she becomes that version. Eventually, the loop closes. When did the final events actually happen? Here's the twist. Most of the film's climax happens before the movie even begins. Remember what Michael Caine's character said? MI6 detected a nuclear event in Siberia 2 weeks before the opera siege. That means the opera siege, Sator's death, and the final battle all happen at the same time, just in different places around the world. This leads us to the film's biggest philosophical question. Is free will an illusion? The film suggests that everything is already decided, that Tenet wins before the story even starts. But Nolan doesn't present a deterministic universe. The protagonist still makes choices throughout. He chooses to go back and found Tenet. He chooses to fight for the future, even knowing how things will unfold. Free will exists, but it leads to a known outcome. That's the paradox at the heart of Tenet. The ending explained, clean and simple. The protagonist is the architect of everything. He will go back in time to form Tenet, recruit Neil and others, and initiate the mission. In the process, he'll lose control of the algorithm fragments, allowing Sator to collect them. Neil dies saving the world, and Tenet becomes a fully formed organization defending the present from future threats. Kat lives, reunites with her son, and the two versions of her timeline quietly converge. One final detail, the film's title. Tenet is a palindrome, and there's a hidden meaning behind it. The red and blue teams each have 10 minutes for the hey. Final mission, 10 forward and 10 backward. That symmetry is at the core of the film's structure. Everything mirrors itself. Past and future, cause and effect, action and reaction. No sequel needed. It's all here,